What's good, YouTube fam? It's your boy Tony, aka the Senator of Chaos and Controversy, and I had once asked a question. It was a serious question, and it was a question to get those to think beyond the surface of the topic put on the table for discussion. And that question was, why do you think segregation at the time that it existed was so successful? Okay. And there's a point to this video that I'm going to get into once I establish this talking point. There was a time where black people and white people met on common ground. Okay. But because there are those who disapproved of it, how do you keep those that weren't considered human, that were once looked at as property, didn't really have a place in the society that was created to exclude them, but to give value to those who are undervalued, but is very much needed in the society that was created? People talk about we don't see color as an issue, but it was very relevant in the laws that were being made to exclude while including other people. Okay. And often you hear the argument in response to, well, black people need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. I struggle just as hard. I have the same issues just like any other person that, is living in society, living from paycheck to paycheck, have medical bills, have this, that, and everything else. That is issues that is commonly shared across the board in some areas and some demographics in this country. And I agree. The point that I was getting at was, how do you see that there are people that have common issues, common problems, and that's where, for whoever was the genius behind this, because it was genius, because it worked, to say, hey, you're still going to be poor, you still ain't going to be looked at as being worth anything, but you will be of some value because you were white and they are not. That's where the privilege came into play. Okay. And despite the fact that you are still going to have the same struggles that you had before, you just won't be aligned with these people. You will be entitled to certain privileges, whereas you can drink out of certain water fountains. You can go into establishments where it's just you guys. You can go into banks, have your neighborhoods, this, that, and everything else. Ride in front of the bus. Have your own schools. Have everything for you, but not them. They have to go somewhere. They have to move around. They have to know their place. They have to stay in their lane. But you guys won't have to worry about that. In those positions in the workplace that you felt threatened was going to be given to them, you don't have to worry about that. We got you. Oh, the rate of pay? We got you. As far as they're concerned, they're going to have to accept what they get. Now, obviously, we have moved past that point. Okay. The reason why I say that it was a success is because there are those that could have prevented segregation from ever existing. What they did, despite that, was co-sign off of that. oh, we can benefit from this. We'll earn a certain slot in society and maintain that position above these people. Sounds like a offer I can't refuse. So when the question is asked, why do people sit idly by and allow things to continue to happen? It's because they feel comfortable within their comfort zone. Anything that makes them feel uncomfortable. Now, I understand the position where people come from when they fail to understand that part of history, to understand how it affects people today. And with the examples that I'm going to put on the table to try to even things out, I want there to be an understanding to take place. Okay? We all know, for the most part, if we're not of a certain percent, what it means to struggle paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. For the most part, we all know what it's like to have medical bills that are outstanding and ridiculous. And a country that is praised on being so superior and greater than any other country here on this earth, and yet and still. We talk about being the richest country, but yet our poverty rate, our homeless epidemic, the fact that there are people going hungry within this country that is so rich. The fact that people can't live because we don't have a livable wage. But yet things are always increasing. Taxes, mortgages, rent, food, clothing, gas, electricity. Daycare, child support. Everything that you have to pick and choose and decipher what's more important. What can you sacrifice this month that you can't sacrifice the next month? When you have kids with health issues, and they're born with certain birth defects, and they have to collect Social Security. When you have to take care of your own family members, like maybe your mother, your father, your brother, or your sister, and the stress that comes along with all that contributes to an anxiety, to where it's like, how are you going to come up with solutions to these issues? But we're that great of a country that we'll figure it out. Meanwhile, while we're seeing other people in other countries going through whatever they're going through, hey, let's just give you billions upon billions upon billions. But you don't invest within yourself. I say sometimes that social media is a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's a blessing because it gets to show you beyond a certain perspective from various vantage points that you can see beyond what is seen when you walk out that door. You can see more so on a global scale. Okay? there's a lot of things that I break down and I analyze, and the understanding that I come to, which draws up certain conclusions, is that we won't see each other as being true Americans until we get over certain shit. Until certain shit is acknowledged and corrected. When balance is restored, we will continue going over regurgitated talking points, issues that should be issues of the past, but still it has that ripple effect. To understand why we have agencies that are considered what we can consider and label as domestic terrorists. And to be upfront and blunt about it, yes, I am referencing law enforcement. Because people say that they are the biggest gang here in America, but to me, they're the biggest terrorist group that is funded. And they prey on the American people, extort money from us, brutalize, batter, and kill us. And I'm not even going to make it a race issue, because what started off as targeting particular groups, from being slave catchers to taking people that were indentured servants, recruiting them, giving them that identity under the white umbrella, and saying you're no longer an immigrant, you are no longer being looked at as this. Now you are part of the slave patrol. To now they have evolved in becoming what we know as police, law enforcement, drug and task force, plantations, which we identified as being this big old field that had cotton, tobacco, sugar cane, or whatever else, to, well, we can't say slavery is acceptable, so now we got prisons that are privatized. And in order to justify why these prisons exist, we got to create laws to say what's legal and what's illegal. And the decisions made by particular individuals come from a long line of people argue against things with little to no understanding or little to no knowledge of. That's why they say education is failing this country, because the more ignorant people are, the more and easily they are to be controlled. Sometimes having too much knowledge of something is also dangerous. So it's a catch-22, so to speak. What I mean by having too much knowledge of something, well, you take a person that some praise to be, oh, she is so intelligent, she is so smart, and yes, she absorbs a lot of details of a lot of things, but use it to put people at a disadvantage by making dangerous generalizations. But to get back on the point of this, the purpose of this video was basically to point out that we have more in common than we would like to admit. Despite the fact that we point out our indifferences, we go through similar things that should bring us together to fight against a common enemy. But yet, since I use segregation as a talking point to say why that was successful and why the division between whites and blacks was created, it's the same tactic used to keep us divided, if not by political, class, race. How people don't come to understand this. And the reason why I bring up certain things is when you go to the doctor to get a checkup and you know something's wrong with your body, say you might feel like you have a headache or you have trouble breathing, whereas before you didn't. Or like you're walking funny now because you got a pain in your leg or a certain, loss of sensation. And you go to the doctor for a checkup to get a diagnosis. You know a problem exists, but you just don't know what that problem is. And when that problem is identified and the doctor calls you up and gives you the test results, and you say, damn, well, you know what? Thank you for your input, but I got this. And you leave the issues to remain untreated. And then what happens? Your body starts deteriorating because the problem went unchecked. That's how I look at the society that we have here in this country. We acknowledge a lot of the things that are wrong within society. We just give every excuse as to why we can't correct it, why we won't correct it. You look at the issues with law enforcement. Why is it taking so long to question qualified immunity? Why is it an issue to create a union outside of the police or internal affairs outside of police, is what I meant to say, to where they're not investigating their own. So you could take the bias out of the situation, the unbiased out of the situation, to where there is fairness without favoritism. When you look at the issues in regards to race, you say, we're going to attack critical race theory, but yet you don't check the kids that say, oh, look at what happened. We don't have to learn anything about black folks and shit. So now we could continue on calling them niggers, monkeys, this, that, and everything else. And we'll get just a slap on the hand. While if they do something, the consequences are more severe. So you want to attack a irrelevant boogeyman to say this is what your children are being taught, but you don't check the children that continue the repeated pattern that you don't want others to know that took place in history. How does that make sense? So when you have a form of bullying that you say that you guys don't condone on any level whatsoever, whether it's a white kid being picked on for being a fucking nerd, having an education, into cosplay, into anime, or whatever, because he is different. He don't fit with the jocks. He doesn't play sports. But then when he gets to a point where he's getting sick and tired of people using him as an example to just fuck with him day in and day out, he comes up and shoots that whole fucking school up, when you could have corrected the problem before it became an issue, a greater issue, you just stood idly by. When you get that black kid that's taunted in school where he's getting cotton thrown at him, when he's getting whipped, when you get a girl getting told that her hair is too nappy or she's too fucking dark, she's ugly because she's black, or that she's overweight, or that she's wearing particular clothes because her parents can't afford to get her the name brand stuff, so she just gotta go with Walmart brand stuff. If it doesn't lead to them committing suicide, it's an ass whooping waiting to happen. But instead of going after the antagonist, you go after those that are standing up for themselves. When it comes to law enforcement, and I have to circle back to this, you got the media painting law enforcement as only being a black issue. And yes, even though there are validated examples to where in certain demographics you see white people getting away with certain shit with their interaction with law enforcement, but that isn't true across the board. Because with the examples that I have pointed out in prior videos with the Daniel Schaefers, the Hunter Brittons, the John Hurleys, the Ryan Whitakers, all white. The white woman that called the police saying that there's a burglary or there was somebody that was in the neighborhood or whatever, and when the cops pulled up and she came out to greet them, got shot. Examples like those are also validated, but conveniently ignored. Because, hey, let's just focus on the injustices in the black community, which is valid and it needs to be addressed. But it's addressed with overlooking what goes on in other communities. And where we seem to slowly merge on common ground when it comes to identifying policing as a problem, as long as you keep the focus over here, people control the narrative while disregarding what's going on over there. And that's the reason why you get the public perception, which is misleading, to say it's only a particular group's problem, no one else's, when that's a lie. But people are slowly coming around. Slowly. When it comes to people making certain comments, when it comes to sports, sports is a form of entertainment. For some, it's a religion. For some, it turns into some kind of cult like loyalty, so to speak. And as I said before in the previous video, to each his own. Sometimes we need a distraction to take us away from the stresses that we have on a daily. People are quick to point out how they view athletes if they speak out against something, because their role is just to be athletes and that's it. Like there's no life once the season is over for them. Like they're not a part of society. But as we've all seen, when it comes to going just to the ATM, getting fucked up by the cops and still have to go make it to the game or to practice or whatever, with the bruises still visible and apparent, it doesn't exempt them from dealing with the shit that we as citizens deal with. They're not untouchable. But yeah, we want to talk about, oh, they're endorsed by this brand or that brand and this, that, and everything else. They supporting China. But yeah, you buy the fucking products. And if you are that concerned with what products are endorsing these athletes and shit, why don't you invest your energy and talk about, well, how come we don't have a sneaker making factory in America? How come we don't have a lot of things that are American made, but we depend on things from overseas to come here? You complain about the shortage of jobs or careers and this and that and everything else, but say little to nothing about jobs that are being outsourced or were outsourced and given to foreign countries. Because those who run these corporations and stuff like that, they want to line their pockets up, make their pockets bigger, and cut you out, but you are okay with that. When you get certain immigrants that come over and they're able to get a business loan just by coming over on a work visa and start up their own business and don't have to pay taxes for like 7 years. But as an American, something that should be awarded to us right off the rip so that we have an equal footing, we aren't. But because a lot of people are unaware of these things that take place within our own backyard, they just get thrown off by other things that are put on the table that are fucking trivial by far. But what affects one affects the other. There is more that I could put on the table to show how we are more similar in the circumstances that we find ourselves in or can relate to, that I could put on the table. But it will still go unacknowledged because we entertain distractions. And that's a problem. We are so busy accepting stereotypes to look at each other with unfair judgment that it's become a handicap characteristic to show how the division is working and has worked for some time. And many of us sit on our high horse with that entitled attitude to say that we're better than someone else when in all reality, truthfully spoken, we are not. That's all I got for today. I encourage those to seriously look at this video, listening to the points that I have made, the examples that I put on the table. Think it thoroughly through before responding, and let me know what you think. Please like, share, hit that subscribe button, and yeah. Until next time, until next video, you already know. Peace.